as a viewer, it takes you a while too, because you start out going like, I cannot stand this woman. Like, she's so mean and awful to everybody. And I, honest to God, I was there like, do I really want to watch an hour and a half of this woman being mean to everybody? And then like 15 minutes in, I'm just feeling so deeply for her. Almost 30 years ago, the British actor Marianne Jean-Baptiste gripped us as the character Hortense in Mike Leigh's emotionally wrenching film Secrets and Lies. Now, almost 30 years later, they've worked together again on the equally intense but incredibly profound film Hard Truths, where Marianne plays a woman named Pansy who's so filled with sadness and anger and loneliness that it spills out of her in every exchange, from the grocery store to getting her hair done to her time with her husband and son at home. And the character feels so real. People have told Marianne they recognize Pansy as someone from their own lives. It takes a lot to create someone who feels that true to life. And to make it happen, Marianne went through a really long process of researching and rehearsing and building a backstory. This is something that Mike Leigh is famous for. I'm so pleased to say she's here to talk to me a little bit about Hard Truths and the journey to get there. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah.
Thanks.
I'm good.
I said this to you when we got going, but you're really good in this, man. Like, it's really...
Why, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Am I right that people have been coming up to you because this is this woman who's so consumed by anger and anxiety, and she doesn't have a kind word to say about anybody, and she's so upset. You have had people come up to you and say they recognize this person in their own families or something, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we've been to Rome, Spain, Copenhagen, London, Toronto, New York. And in each place, somebody has said, well, a number of people have said, that's my mother-in-law, that's my mother, that's my auntie. Some people have even confessed that they're Pansy. And you sort of say, well, you're too self-aware, to be Pansy, but I understand.
What do you make of that?
I think it's beautiful. I think that the way we work, we build like three-dimensional characters. They are rich, and they're based on real people. That's our source for creating them. I mean, obviously they change. No one's ever going to say, oh, Marianne based that character on me. I mean, nobody would dare admit that.
No one would want to admit it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like she's a real person. So people will identify with that. She says things that a lot of people think but would never dare say. Look at you. Fix your face. You're dealing with the public, handling people's food.
Stop, please.
Oh, you can pipe down and all standing there like an ostrich.
For us non-thespians in this world, this process of you and Mike developing this character is fascinating. Now, I read enough about it that I think I might understand it, kinda. But for those who are sort of new to it, how would you mind talking to us a little bit about how you developed this character?
Okay, I'll try and make it as succinct as possible. Well, you first start with him saying to you, when you come into rehearsal, bring a list of people you know from real life. And you do. You don't have to know them very well. It could be the girl that works at your bakery that you go to. And he just cuts the names off. As you talk about them, you describe them, and the list gets smaller and smaller until you focus on about 5 of them. Anything from 3 to 5 characters. Then through exercises, you merge those characters together, and that becomes your embryo for the character. And then you start again with the first memory, and you work your way up through their life in finite detail. Schools, school teachers, neighbors, friends, or no friends. Do you know what I mean? And then he's doing this with all the actors individually, because you work in isolation. And then one day you'll go into your rehearsal room and there'll be somebody else, and he'll say, okay, this is, I knew Michelle, but you'll go, Michelle Austin is going to play your sister or Pansy's sister. And then you start again with like a collaborative history. So we invented their cousins, aunties, grandparents, parents, their holidays, who they played out with, who went to bed first, who was the one who always tried to stay up longest. So it's really, really detailed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And anything that you wouldn't know or your character wouldn't know, you don't know. So there's a lot of stepping out of the room while he talks to the other person about things that happen. You know, like Pansy's memory of her sister being brought home from the hospital. Chantel wouldn't know unless Pansy had told her that I was really angry when you came home from the hospital. So that's something that she wouldn't know, but something that would have been discussed with Mike.
Is there a plot?
No.
Interesting. What I mean by that is there's no plot in this. They're not going, okay, the story we're going to tell is of this woman who's dealing with this.
No.
And that also comes out, Jen.
That you discover
Wow.
what the film is about when you see it.
Who, like, you discover what oh, geez,
yeah.
Louise.
The actors discover that. You only know, like, you get a piece of paper just before shooting, and it says something like, Pansy wakes up, Pansy goes into the kitchen, Pansy goes shopping. You know, nothing about Chantel, nothing about Moses, nothing about Curtly. Just, you know, you're the center of the universe.
Okay, I have so many questions on this. Okay, let me just start with this. How did you, with this emotional intensity and anger and loneliness and anxiety and stress that Pansy's walking around with all the time, talk to me about what you were channeling there. Is it a memory? It's a couple of people? Like, essentially, I want to know how you get there.
Well, you get there through the character building with Mike. So you sit there and you talk about school and what happened, and you loved math and blah, blah, blah. And you say, oh, I've got a math test. She's gonna do a math test, blah, blah, blah. Mike decides that she fails the math test. Mike decides that the guy that she's got the crush on doesn't like her and in fact hits her and hates her. Mike decides that she doesn't get the job that she's going up for. Do you know what I mean? So all that disappointment and pain is built into the character. So then by the time you release Pansy out into the world, she's got all this failure, heartbreak, disappointment.
I noticed she walks with tension. Like she walks hunched and afraid, and she's always sort of holding something over her chest. Like, how do you develop how she moves and how she is physically?
Well, we worked a lot in rehearsal. A lot of it is we do talk a lot, but there's a lot of moving around as the character in space. What's interesting is I love running, and during rehearsals, I was like trying to go to the gym first or at the end of the evening. And then I found that when I went early before rehearsals, it was so hard because of the endorphins to get into her state of being. So I had to stop. And I just sort of found this tightness, not stretching, not working out, just this heavy tightness that felt like this is the body she inhabits. I mean, I even have seen pictures. Somebody sent me some pictures the other day of rehearsals, and I was like, shit. Well,
go on. You can do whatever you want. You go on. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I was like, damn. Just like I'm glad I took my body back from her because you know she just looks different. Her arms are different. It's like it's weird. It's a weird phenomenon because you transform by working in this way. You transform in such a way that you honestly can look at the screen and go, that's not me.
How's going home after rehearsal?
Well, I was living in London to do it. I live in Los Angeles. But I think that I didn't take her home with me. But my husband argues about it. He says, oh, yes, you did. I was like, no.
Okay, so let's go back. So you don't know what you weren't in. You don't know the conversations that your character wasn't a part of. You don't know any of the other characters' feelings towards your character, and you don't know. You're just living your life as this character, and then you go to the screening to see what the movie turned out to be. Tell me about that. This is fascinating to me. Tell me about the first time you saw it.
I was in shock. I was stunned. I was like, Jesus, she's a lot, man. She is a lot. It's like, I don't know about this. I mean, it's like, yeah, it was incredible. I just, and my manager was going, what was it like? Because nobody had seen it at this point. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. It's like, all I could do is it was traumatic because I was just feeling her anxiety. Do you know what I mean? That's what I was focused on, the anxiety and the pain of her, and thinking, all of this is too much. The second time I watched it and people were laughing, I was just like, this woman's hurting. I mean, you're laughing, but
Yeah.
it was weird.
Yeah.
It's the third time in Toronto, which is like my TIFF. I call it my TIFF now because they were so wonderful and they received us so well that I actually relaxed into it, enjoyed the humor, sobbed at like the heartbreaking moments in the piece. But yeah, it took a while to sort of adjust and realize what we've done.
Yeah, as a viewer, it takes you a while too, because you start out going like, I cannot stand this woman. Like, she's so mean and awful to everybody. And I, honest to God, I was there like, do I really want to watch an hour and a half of this woman being mean to everybody? And then like 15 minutes in, I'm just feeling so deeply for her. And I'm just, and I'm rooting for her, and I want her to be relieved of her pain. But I'm also, man, like this is not a paint by numbers film. Like, it's quite emotionally transformative as a viewer as well. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
How is seeing the other characters' moments? Like what most struck you about the other characters' moments that you didn't get to see?
That Moses was just actually walking. He was walking because I teased the actor the whole time saying, "Tell me where you're going."
Right. So your son in the film, he would go out he would say like, oh wow. So he goes to you and says, "I'm going out," and you say, "Where?" And he says, "I'm going for a walk." And we know, because we see him going for a walk in the film. You can tell I'm blown away by this. But you didn't know he went for a walk until you saw it.
No. Didn't know he went for walks. Thought all sorts of things were on Pansy's mind, that he's with, he's hanging out with the wrong sort of people. Maybe there's a girl somewhere, but then nobody would be interested in Moses, poor Moses. She was convinced that he was watching porn in his room. So, whenever she opened the bedroom door, it was sort of like bang, to try and catch him at something. So that was great. Also, the hairdressers. Those lovely scenes in the hairdressers, sort of, those were wonderful.
Watching people get along without you there, your sister being so kind to people, even though she had the same upbringing and all that. Yeah, right.
Totally.
This is the most broad question I can ask you on this, because then I want to talk a little bit about you. As a non-actor, what's the benefit of all of this? Like, what's the benefit of this way of working that Mike Leigh works, and you work with him on this, where like all these things that people are hearing right now I can tell people are listening to this going, this is not how I'm used to hearing about films being made. As an actor, as someone who's been in it, what's good about it? What's the benefit?
Well, the benefit of it is for an actor, and obviously there are different sorts of actors who like to work in very different ways. For me, Mike sees you as a creative artist in your own right, not just an interpreter. So you are building the world with him. You're building this character. It's based in reality. It's not about sort of broad strokes. It's about detail. I mean, look, if this film was done in an ordinary way, Pansy probably would have had a moment whereby you understand why she's in so much pain, and then something happens and she changes and becomes a different person.
Yeah.
But that's not life.
Yeah, and Christopher Cross plays in the background while she's walking down the street being nice.
Totally.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
This is not life. And I think he's interested in the human condition and exploring that. And I think it's a real gift for an actor to explore the human condition and have a bit more autonomy in doing that.
It felt, and I'm not just being obsequious here, it felt like just a showcase of your great acting. Like it felt like a showcase. And I want to say you're quite invisible. The acting is quite invisible in it. Like you do really feel like you are the person. I don't mean it like that, but knowing what I learned about how you made it, it is such a testament to your skill as an actor. And I think your skill as a theater actor. And then I was looking back to your past, and I think theater has been such a big part of your life. And so I guess like what I'm always interested in is that moment, that first time on stage where you go like, oh, this is for me.
Yeah, I think it's probably when I was about 6 and I played Cadiga the Gypsy in a nativity play and just loved it.
That's a big role.
It was a huge.
Oh yeah, that's one of the big ones in the nativity play.
That's one of the big ones, man. There's me. It was a nativity play. There's me, the shepherds, the kings, but I was the queen of the gypsies.
And you had this moment of, this is for me, this is what I want?
Yeah, I loved it. I just thought, wow, my imagination. I was always an imaginative kid, always writing stories, making up stories and the like. And I think that kind of, it was then. And also working with Mike, because I did 3 years out of drama school, I did a play with him and worked in the same way, because he works exactly the same way for plays. And I thought, man, this is it. This is creative. This is like really being fed creatively. I think I'm a very greedy creative, I like sewing, knitting, cooking, painting.
Yeah, but that's art. Like that's art. And when Secrets and Lies gets so big, I mean, that movie takes off and becomes, everyone's talking about it, becomes this. All of a sudden, it's not about. Well, I don't want to say it's not about art, but I'm aware that extra art things can come with that. Attention and celebrity or award shows. And like, how did that film change things for you?
Gosh, well, it opened up work in the USA, that's for sure. It was, it was amazing in the sense that, there was this whole new market that I could go and work in. I kind of got stuck a bit doing like procedural TV drama type stuff. And that's when I started painting and doing other creative things outside.
Can you connect the dots there? Is that you weren't being necessarily fulfilled in the police drama thing?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I tried to find ways to keep it, to keep yourself honest. Like I do the character's grocery list whilst doing an interrogation and things like that, to just keep it alive, to keep some life behind the eyes when you're doing it. But I wasn't getting fed in the way that I was used to being fed on stage or, working with the likes of Mike. So it was really about trying to feed myself in other areas.
Interesting. What's if you were to A/B, what's the biggest culture shock when you start making TV and film in the US?
The biggest culture shock is the lack of collaboration. It's the fact that, a lot of things are set, like, you turn up to set one day and they'll go, oh, look, this is Philip. He's going to be playing your husband of 30 years. And you go, oh, hi, pleased to meet you. You have a little chat. And then the next thing you're on set, sort of like acting this relationship that has been going on for years. Now, this can be done very successfully and has been. I mean, that's what we get, because there isn't the rehearsal time and stuff like that allotted to really build something a bit more sort of organic. So just adjusting to that sort of thing and thinking, okay, I've got to endow him with the qualities that my husband has, perhaps, to make it work, I think that's been the biggest culture shock. The costumes, for example, there'd be like a Gucci jacket and you'd be like, well, she works for the FBI.
Yeah, right.
How much do they earn?
Yeah, right. Going back to I'm aware of the time. Going back to Hard Truths. And you might have answered this earlier, but I'm curious as to why we're rooting for Pansy. Like, you may have touched on this earlier as to why people identify with her, but like, not just in the film, people who watch this film empathize with her. They might know, as you mentioned, they have a mother-in-law who reminds them of that. I mean, I don't, thank God, my mother-in-law is very nice, but like, a mother-in-law that reminded them of that, and or a sister or something like that. But there's a difference between recognizing and loving. And you get the feeling that the audience members are loving and empathizing and having compassion for this woman. Why do you think that is?
I think because we all have a bit of Pansy in us. I think we all have. I mean, look, all her observations of the world are accurate. It's just her judgment of them. Do you know what I mean? It's the judgment. And I think people kind of recognize that. They've looked at a dog with a coat on and thought, what the hell? Do you know what I mean? But they wouldn't dare say it. And they might think, oh, that's cute. But having somebody just explicitly demonstrate their ire for that sort of thing is, I think, on some levels refreshing as well. Yeah, I think that, and also I think her pain is so obvious. I think it's quite obvious. I don't think it's in your face necessarily, but it is obvious that this person's really hurting, and afraid. When somebody wakes up each morning with a start, you're like, damn.
I mean, beautifully said. And again, you're just excellent in this thing. And thanks for making the time for us and breaking it down for me. I didn't expect to have so many questions about how this was made, but it's fascinating. Isn't it fascinating how you do this, how these things are getting made?
It is fascinating. I mean, it's fascinating too that, when he goes up to try and get finances, he says to the financiers, I want to do a film. Don't know what it's about. I'm not going to discuss casting. And you can't interfere. And he gets the money to do it.
But we have the 11th lead in the nativity scene as our...
Padiga, Padiga the gypsy.